All right, let's get right into it. The idea of Nazi bombers flying over Manhattan. It sounds like something straight out of an alternate history novel, right? But what if I told you it wasn't just fiction? What we're digging into today is a very real and unbelievably audacious secret plan to strike the very heart of America during World War II.
And you have to understand, this wasn't just some fringe idea. The ambition to do this went all the way to the top. For Hitler and his high command, hitting the U.S. mainland wasn't just about military strategy. It was about sending a message. It was a way to prove that absolutely no one, not even the industrial powerhouse of America, was safe from their reach.
So that's the big question, isn't it? It's one thing to have a dream, an ambition. It's a whole other thing to turn that into a workable military operation. And as we're about to see, this idea went way beyond just wishful thinking. It evolved into a tangible, though incredibly risky, plan.
Now, the single biggest hurdle, the one thing standing in the way of any German planner, was simple geography. You have this massive, unforgiving body of water, the Atlantic Ocean. We're talking over 3,000 miles of open sea separating their air bases in Europe from any target in America. It was just a logistical nightmare.
And believe me, they threw some wild ideas at this problem. I mean, some of it was pure science fiction for the time, like launching V-2 rockets from containers being towed by U-boats. They even had plans with their Italian allies to sneak midget submarines into the Hudson River. But the most famous attempt, of course, was the America Bomber Program, a whole project dedicated to building a plane that could make the round trip.
The thing is, every single one of these ideas just slammed into a brick wall. The missile tech? Way too experimental. And those massive long-range bombers? Even the best prototypes just couldn't fly from France to New York and back again with a decent bomb load. It just wasn't possible. The Atlantic seemed unbeatable. That is, until a new, much more secretive plan started to take shape.
For decades, this next part of the story was completely unknown, buried in the past. But then, in 2005, something incredible happened. A former Luftwaffe pilot finally came forward and revealed he was part of a top-secret mission that historians had never even heard of, a one-way mission to bomb New York City.
His name was Peter Brill, and his testimony, well, it changed everything. He gave us the missing pieces of a puzzle that people had been wondering about for years. See, he wasn't just talking about some theory he'd heard. He was there. He claimed he was one of the actual pilots selected and trained for this attack. Suddenly, this wasn't just a concept anymore. It was an operational plan.
And this was the machine they were going to use, the Heinkel He-177, nicknamed the Griffin. Now, this plane had let's say a fiery reputation. The early models were infamous for their engines bursting into flames mid-flight. Not great. But the later versions, especially the A7 model, were much, much better. They had a bigger wingspan, more powerful engines, and they just might be able to pull off an extreme long-range mission.
So, let's just do the math. By 1944, the Allies have taken back France, so any attack has to come from bases in occupied Norway. And the direct distance from Trondheim, Norway, to New York City is a staggering 3,590 miles. So how in the world could they possibly make that work?
Well, here's the problem. A standard Hell 177, even carrying a relatively light bomb, could only go about 3,300 miles. Period. You can see it right there. The math doesn't add up. They were hundreds of miles short. The planes simply could not get there.
So the big question is, how do you solve that? How do you not only close that nearly 300-mile gap, but also find a way to carry more bombs to make the whole trip worthwhile? The answer they came up with was, well, it was as brilliant as it was incredibly dangerous. And it all centered on a secret pit stop in one of the most desolate places on the planet.
The absolute key to this entire mission, the linchpin holding it all together, was Greenland. The plan was to use that enormous, practically empty island as a secret forward base, a hidden gas station in the middle of the Arctic, right under the noses of the Allies.
And, this wasn't nearly as crazy as it might sound. For most of the war, both the Germans and the Allies were already playing this secret game of cat and mouse all over Greenland. They were setting up these tiny hidden weather stations to get vital intel for the war in Europe. Both sides already knew how to operate there in total secrecy. And here is the proof of concept, the aha moment. In an unbelievable rescue mission that happened just 3 days before D-Day, a massive German transport plane, a Ju-290, flew to Greenland, landed on the sea ice, picked up 26 stranded weathermen, and then flew all the way back to France, completely undetected. This wasn't a theory anymore. They had just proven you could land a big plane on a secret ice runway in the Arctic and get away with it.
Okay, so with the Greenland refueling stop now a proven possibility, the crazy, audacious plan to bomb New York really started to take its final shape. So let's break down exactly how it was supposed to work.
All right, here it is. A small flight of 5 He-177 bombers takes off from Norway. They're loaded up with bombs, but they're light on fuel. Their first stop? A secret, pre-prepared landing strip on the Greenland ice. There, they'd refuel from gas that had already been flown in by transport planes. Then, they take off again for the final leg of their journey, the attack on New York.
And when you break the journey down like this, you can see how the impossible suddenly becomes, well, possible. That Greenland stop splits the enormous trip into 2 much more manageable flights. Both are well within the bomber's range, and it even gives them the ability to carry a much heavier bomb load.
But here's the thing. This was always a one-way mission for the planes. After dropping their bombs on New York, the pilots were supposed to fly out over the Atlantic, ditch their multi-million-dollar bombers in the ocean, and then wait to be rescued by German U-boats. And this is the exact point where the plan starts to completely fall apart.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The expert analysis of this plan is pretty blunt. Quoting here, "This part of the plan makes no sense to me. To sit at the surface and to be communicating by radio with aircraft overhead would have been a death sentence."
I mean, you have to remember what the Atlantic was like in late 1944. The Allies basically owned it. American and British hunter-killer groups were everywhere, and they were sinking U-boats at an insane rate. A German submarine just sitting on the surface off the coast of New York, waiting for a radio call, it would have been a sitting duck. The escape plan wasn't just a long shot, it was practically a suicide mission for the U-boat crews too.
So, what we have is this incredibly clever, really ingenious plan for the attack phase, the Greenland Gambit, but it's all built on a foundation of massive risk, and it ends with an escape plan that was just fatally flawed from the very beginning.
And that, almost certainly, is why this mission never got the green light. When the High Command and the Luftwaffe actually sat down and looked at the whole thing, they would have seen it for exactly what it was, a completely unacceptable waste of precious men and machines.
Just think about it from their perspective. Do the cost-benefit analysis. The cost? 5 of your most advanced, heavy bombers and their elite veteran crews, all totally irreplaceable at this late stage of the war. And the benefit? Well, it would be a purely symbolic attack. It would cause panic, sure. It would shatter America's feeling of safety. But in terms of actual physical damage, minimal. The strategic math just wasn't there.
In the end, it was a spectacular gamble that just wasn't worth taking. But the fact that this plan even existed tells you everything about the desperate, high-stakes mindset of a regime that was staring down defeat. It forces us to imagine what could have been, a world where the air raid sirens started wailing over Manhattan not for a drill, but for real. How would that single event have changed the mindset of a nation that felt completely untouchable? It's a really chilling question, from a plan that came terrifyingly close to being more than just a dream.